The avoidant person is experiencing something they did not anticipate and cannot escape. Losing you has cost them everything that matters in ways that are becoming clearer and more painful with each passing day, in ways that are robbing them of sleep and peace and any sense that their life is on the right trajectory. This is not exaggeration or dramatic overstatement. This is the reality they're living with as they recognize the comprehensive and cascading losses that losing you has created. They cannot sleep at night because when they lie down and the distractions of the day fall away, they're left alone with the recognition of what they lost and what they destroyed. In the quiet darkness, they replay moments from the relationship. They remember what it felt like to have you in their life. They confront the reality that you're gone and that your absence has created a hole they cannot fill. They cannot sleep because the regret is overwhelming, because the recognition of their mistakes consumes them, because they're forced to sit with the truth that they had everything they needed to be happy and they destroyed it through their own patterns and their own fear. The insomnia is not just about missing you, though they do miss you in ways that feel physically painful. The sleeplessness is about the comprehensive dismantling of their life that losing you has initiated. They're recognizing that losing you meant losing the relationship, yes, but it also meant losing their peace of mind, their sense of themselves as a decent person, their hope for the future, their belief that their defensive patterns serve them, their ability to connect meaningfully with others, their trajectory toward anything that feels like genuine happiness or fulfillment. Losing you cost them everything because you weren't just a romantic partner, but the person who saw them most clearly, who offered them what they most needed, who represented their best chance at the intimacy and connection their heart craves underneath all their defenses. And in losing you, they lost not just the specific relationship, but lost faith in themselves, lost the possibility of similar connection with anyone else, lost time they cannot reclaim, lost the future they could have built with you. The cost is so comprehensive, so devastating, so impossible to escape that it keeps them awake at night, wrestling with the magnitude of what their patterns cost them, and with the recognition that they cannot undo what they've done or restore what they've lost. The sleepless nights are haunted by what they destroyed. The avoidant person is experiencing insomnia and disturbed sleep that is directly connected to their loss of you and to their inability to escape the recognition of what they destroyed. The sleepless nights are a manifestation of their internal torment, evidence that their defensive strategies are failing to protect them from the pain of their choices, proof that losing you has penetrated their defended equilibrium in ways that cannot be suppressed or avoided. Understanding what happens during these sleepless nights reveals the depth of their suffering and the inescapable nature of their regret. During the sleepless nights, the avoidant person's mind replays specific moments from the relationship with painful clarity, moments they can now see differently than they saw them when they were occurring. They remember times when you were vulnerable with them and they responded with withdrawal instead of with the warmth you deserved. They remember conversations where you were trying to connect and they were creating distance. They remember your face during moments when they hurt you, expressions of pain or confusion or disappointment that they didn't fully register at the time because they were too defended. They remember the last conversation, the ending, the moment when things became final. These memories play on loop, uninvited and uncontrollable, forcing them to confront their behavior and their choices from the perspective of loss rather than from the defended perspective they held during the relationship. The memories are torture because they can see now what they couldn't or wouldn't see then, and because they cannot change what happened no matter how much they wish they could. During the sleepless nights, the avoidant person experiences physical manifestations of their anxiety and regret that make rest impossible. Their heart races as they think about what they lost. Their chest feels tight with the weight of regret. Their mind spins with thoughts of you, of the relationship, of their mistakes, of what could have been if they'd been different. They might get up and pace, unable to lie still with the discomfort. They might reach for their phone to look at old photos or messages, torturing themselves with evidence of what existed and what they destroyed. They might compose messages to you that they don't send, trying to find words that could somehow communicate what they're feeling or could somehow undo the damage. The physical restlessness matches their psychological restlessness. They cannot find peace in any position, cannot settle their mind or their body, cannot escape the discomfort that losing you has created. During the sleepless nights, the avoidant person confronts the specific things they wish they'd done differently with a clarity that is devastating. They wish they'd been braver, wish they'd fought their fear instead of running from intimacy. They wish they'd communicated their feelings instead of hiding behind defensive distance. They wish they'd appreciated what you offered instead of taking it for granted. They wish they'd gone to therapy and worked on their patterns instead of letting those patterns destroy the relationship. They wish they'd chosen you over their comfort, wish they'd prioritized the relationship over their defended independence. Each of these wishes is painful because it represents recognition of an opportunity they had and didn't take, a choice they could have made differently, a moment when a different decision would have led to a different outcome. The clarity of seeing what they should have done is excruciating because it makes undeniable that the loss was preventable, that they're responsible, that their choices created the outcome they're now suffering through. During the sleepless nights, the avoidant person experiences crushing loneliness that is different from and worse than the loneliness they felt before they met you. Before you, they were lonely, but they'd adapted to that loneliness, had convinced themselves they preferred being alone, had organized their life around defended isolation that felt tolerable, if not satisfying. But after experiencing connection with you, after knowing what it felt like to be seen and understood and cared for, the return to loneliness is unbearable. They know now what they are missing. They've experienced the alternative to their defended isolation. And the loneliness in the sleepless nights is not just absence of company, but is acute awareness of the specific absence of you, of what you provided, of the connection you offered. This loneliness is worse because it's informed by knowing what was possible and recognizing they destroyed their access to it. During the sleepless nights, the avoidant person cannot escape thoughts about whether you're sleeping peacefully, whether you've moved on, whether you think about them at all, whether you're with someone else. These thoughts are obsessive and painful. The idea that you might be sleeping well while they're tormented keeps them awake because it means you've genuinely moved on, that you're not suffering the way they're suffering, that the loss affected them more than it affected you. The possibility that you're with someone new creates jealousy and regret that feels like physical pain. The uncertainty about whether you ever think about them or whether you've completely forgotten them creates anxiety that prevents rest. They're trapped in their own mind with questions they cannot answer and scenarios they cannot stop imagining. During the sleepless nights, the avoidant person experiences the failure of all their usual coping mechanisms and defensive strategies. Normally, when they feel uncomfortable emotions, they can distract themselves with work or hobbies, can suppress the feelings through emotional disconnection, can rationalize away the discomfort through defensive narratives. But in the dark quiet of sleepless nights, none of these strategies work. There's nothing to distract them. The feelings are too intense to suppress. The defensive narratives fall apart under the weight of their regret and their recognition of what they lost. They're forced to sit with the raw, undefended experience of their pain and their loss without any of the protective mechanisms they normally rely on. This failure of their defenses is terrifying because it means they're exposed to the full weight of what they're feeling without any way to escape it. The sleepless nights are creating cumulative exhaustion that affects every aspect of the avoidant person's functioning. They're tired during the day, which makes everything harder. Their work performance suffers. Their patience is shorter. Their mood is worse. Their ability to cope with normal stresses is diminished, and each exhausted day is followed by another sleepless night, creating a downward spiral where exhaustion makes the emotional pain harder to manage, which makes sleep more difficult, which creates more exhaustion. The sleepless nights are not just a symptom of their loss of you, but a contributing factor to the comprehensive deterioration of their life that losing you has initiated. The comprehensive loss They're only now understanding. The avoidant person is recognizing that losing you was not an isolated loss of a single relationship, but was a comprehensive loss that has affected or destroyed everything in their life that provided meaning, stability, hope, or happiness. Understanding the full scope of what they lost reveals why the cost has been so devastating and why they're experiencing it as having lost everything rather than just having lost a relationship. The avoidant person lost the relationship itself, which was the most significant and meaningful connection they'd experienced. The relationship where they felt most seen and most understood. This primary loss is obvious and immediate. They lost your presence, your companionship, your love, your care. But what makes this loss particularly devastating is their recognition that it wasn't just any relationship, but was the best relationship they'd had, the deepest connection they'd experienced, the partnership that came closest to meeting their unacknowledged needs for intimacy and acceptance. They're comparing every aspect of their life now to what it was when you were in it and recognizing that nothing measures up. That the relationship provided richness and meaning that is absent from their life now. The avoidant person lost their sense of themselves as a decent person who makes reasonable choices, lost their self-image and their self-respect in ways that are affecting their fundamental relationship with themselves. Throughout their life, the avoidant maintained certain beliefs about who they are, their independent person making conscious choices about their life, their reasonable person whose relationship preferences are valid, their good person who doesn't intentionally hurt others. But losing you and recognizing what they destroyed has shattered these beliefs. They're forced to see themselves as a person whose patterns hurt innocent people, whose supposed independence is actually defended isolation that cost them happiness, whose choices led to catastrophic outcomes. This loss of positive self-image is creating an identity crisis where they no longer know who they are or how to see themselves, where every aspect of their self-understanding is called into question. The avoidant person lost their hope for the future, their sense that they're moving toward anything good or meaningful, their belief that their life trajectory is positive. When you were in their life, even with all their ambivalence and their patterns, there was a future that included you, possibilities they could imagine, a trajectory toward building something meaningful. But losing you has eliminated that future and has replaced it with emptiness and uncertainty. They cannot imagine a future that feels as compelling as the one they could have had with you. They cannot envision themselves finding someone comparable to you or building something as meaningful with anyone else. The future stretches ahead as a series of days to get through rather than as something to build toward or to hope for. This loss of hope and positive future orientation is creating an existential emptiness that makes every day feel pointless. The avoidant person lost their ability to connect meaningfully with others, finding that their capacity for connection has actually diminished rather than expanded since losing you. They're more defended now, more cynical, more closed off. They compare everyone to you and find everyone lacking, which prevents them from investing in new connections. They're more aware of their patterns, but also more hopeless about changing them, which makes them pull back from situations where intimacy might develop. They're more isolated than they were before they met you because they've experienced what genuine connection feels like, and they cannot settle for less. But they also cannot achieve genuine connection with anyone else. This increasing isolation is making their loneliness worse and is creating a feedback loop where isolation makes them more defended, which creates more isolation. The avoidant person lost their belief that their defensive patterns serve them or protect them, recognizing instead that their patterns destroyed their chance at happiness. Throughout their life, the avoidant believed their defensive strategies were necessary protection. That withdrawal and emotional distance and independence kept them safe from the hurt they feared. But losing you has demolished this belief. They can see now that their patterns didn't protect them from pain. They created pain. They destroyed something good. They cost them their best chance at happiness. The defenses that were supposed to keep them safe have left them alone and miserable and full of regret. This recognition that their entire approach to relationships is fundamentally flawed and actively harmful to their own well-being is creating a crisis where they don't know how to move forward, don't know if they can change, don't know if there's any hope for a different outcome. The avoidant person lost time that cannot be recovered. Years they spent with you that they cannot relive differently. Opportunities they cannot reclaim. They're acutely aware that they had a specific amount of time with you and they wasted it, squandered it through their patterns, failed to appreciate it while it was happening. They're aware that time is finite, that they're getting older, that the time they had with you is gone forever and cannot be reclaimed, no matter how much they've learned or how much they regret their choices. This loss of time is particularly painful as they age and as they recognize that opportunities for love and connection become fewer, that they may never have another chance like the one they had with you. The avoidant person lost their sense of safety and control that their defended position provided, finding that their defenses no longer work to protect them from pain. They thought that keeping distance, maintaining independence, not allowing themselves to need anyone would keep them safe from hurt. But they're experiencing more pain now than they would have experienced if they had taken the risk of full intimacy with you. Their defenses failed. The pain they were protecting against found them anyway, but it came in the form of loss and regret rather than in the form of betrayal or abandonment they feared. This recognition that their defensive strategies don't actually protect them from pain, but simply trade one form of pain for another potentially worse form, is eliminating the justification for maintaining the defenses while leaving them without any other coping strategy. The avoidant person lost the specific future they could have built with you, the experiences they could have shared, the life they could have created together, the growth they could have achieved in relationship with someone who understood them. They're confronting the loss not just of what was, but of what could have been. The trips they could have taken, the home they could have built, the experiences they could have shared, the support they could have provided each other, the life they could have created. This loss of potential future is particularly haunting because it represents all the experiences they'll never have, all the moments that could have existed but won't exist, all the joy and meaning and connection they could have built but destroyed before it could fully develop. How losing? You dismantled their entire life structure. Beyond the specific losses, losing you has initiated a comprehensive dismantling of the avoidant person's entire life structure in ways that are affecting every domain of their existence and that are proving impossible to halt or reverse. Understanding how this dismantling is occurring reveals why losing you cost them everything rather than just costing them the relationship. Losing you dismantled the avoidant person's carefully constructed narrative about their life and their choices, forcing them to confront that the story they told themselves was self-deception rather than truth. They told themselves they chose independence because they valued it, that they ended relationships because of incompatibility, that they were protecting themselves through reasonable boundaries, that they were living according to their authentic preferences. But losing you and experiencing the devastation this loss has created has made this narrative unsustainable. They can see now that their supposed choices were fear-driven avoidance, that their independence is lonely isolation, that their boundaries are walls preventing the connection they actually need. The collapse of this narrative leaves them without the framework they use to understand and justify their life, without the story that made their patterns and their choices make sense. Losing you dismantled the avoidant person's work-life balance and their ability to use professional achievement as a substitute for personal connection. Before losing you, the avoidant often channeled their energy into work and achievement, using professional success as evidence that their life was working and as a distraction from their relational emptiness. But losing you has made work feel meaningless. Professional achievements don't provide the satisfaction they used to. Success feels hollow when there's no one to share it with or no one who cares. The work that used to fill their time and provide their sense of purpose now feels like empty distraction that cannot address the real emptiness in their life. This loss of work as an effective coping mechanism means they have fewer ways to avoid confronting their loneliness and their loss. Losing you dismantled the avoidant person's social life and their relationships with friends and family in multiple ways. Friends are tired of hearing about their regret about you. Family members are frustrated by their obvious unhappiness and their refusal to do anything constructive about it. The avoidant has less energy and less interest in social engagement because the pain of losing you consumes their emotional resources. They might isolate more, which damages their relationships through neglect. Or they might use friends as sounding boards for their regret in ways that exhaust their friends' patience. Either way, their social connections are deteriorating because their loss of you has made them a worse friend, worse family member, worse social connection. This deterioration of their social network increases their isolation and removes support systems that could help them cope. Losing you dismantled the avoidant person's physical health and their self-care routines in ways that create additional deterioration. The sleepless nights create exhaustion. The emotional pain affects their appetite. They might not eat enough or might eat poorly. They might drink more to numb the pain. They might stop exercising or engaging in activities that used to support their well-being. They might neglect their appearance or their living space. This physical and lifestyle deterioration creates visible evidence of their decline and creates feedback loops where poor physical state worsens emotional state, which worsens physical state. The person they see in the mirror is not the put-together person they used to be, but is someone who looks tired, sad, diminished. Losing you dismantled the avoidant person's financial stability in some cases, particularly if their emotional state has affected their work performance or if they've made poor financial decisions from a place of pain or regret. Their inability to focus at work might affect their job security or their advancement. Their emotional spending or their withdrawal from financial planning might create financial problems. The comprehensive nature of how losing you has affected them means that even practical domains like finances are not immune from the deterioration that the loss has initiated. Losing you dismantled the avoidant person's sense of time and their relationship with their past, present, and future. Their past is now colored by regret about what they did wrong and what they lost. Their present is consumed by pain and by obsessive thoughts about you and about their mistakes. Their future is empty of hope or positive expectation. This disorganization of their temporal experience means they cannot escape the pain by focusing on a different time frame. The past is painful. The present is painful. The future is painful. They're trapped in comprehensive temporal suffering where no time frame offers relief. Losing you dismantled the avoidant person's basic sense of efficacy and agency, their belief that they can create outcomes they want or that their choices lead to positive results. They made choices in the relationship based on what they thought they needed. Those choices led to catastrophic outcomes. This teaches them that they cannot trust their own judgment, that their choices lead to destroying what they value, that they lack the ability to create the life they want. This loss of basic sense of efficacy creates helplessness and passivity that makes it even harder for them to take constructive action to improve their situation. If they cannot trust themselves to make good choices, how can they make any choices at all? Why the cost of losing you continues to compound. The cost of losing you is not static or contained, but is continuing to compound over time, creating increasing losses and increasing pain as the implications of the original loss continue to unfold. Understanding why and how the cost compounds reveals why the avoidance suffering is not diminishing with time, but is actually intensifying in certain ways. The cost compounds because time is passing that they cannot reclaim. And with each passing day, they're further from the possibility of reconciliation and further from the time when you were part of their life. Each day that passes is a day they could have spent with you, but spent alone instead. Each day creates more distance between the present and the relationship, making the relationship feel more like a distant dream than like a recent reality. Time that passes is time they're getting older without addressing their patterns. Time they're missing out on connection and growth and experiences they could be having if they'd been capable of maintaining the relationship. The passage of time creates accumulating loss of all the moments and experiences and growth they could have had, but lost through their choices. The cost compounds because their inability to move on or to find comparable connection means their life is not progressing toward anything positive, but is stagnating in regret and loneliness. Instead of the natural healing trajectory where pain diminishes over time and new possibilities emerge, the avoidant is stuck in their regret, unable to move forward, unable to find anything that addresses the emptiness losing you created. This stagnation means that all the other losses, the loss of hope, the loss of connection, the loss of positive trajectory, are not being resolved, but are continuing indefinitely with no indication they'll improve. The cost compounds because their recognition of their patterns and their awareness of their responsibility is growing rather than diminishing, making it harder for them to maintain any defensive narratives that would ease their pain. Early after the loss, they might have been able to maintain some minimization or some blame shifting that protected their ego. But time and reflection have stripped away these defenses, leaving them with clear and undeniable awareness that they're responsible for destroying something valuable through their own dysfunctional patterns. This increasing clarity about their responsibility and their dysfunction makes the regret worse rather than better. As time passes, the cost compounds because watching you move forward and thrive without them creates new waves of loss and regret. With each new milestone or achievement in your life, every time they hear about your success, your happiness, your possible new relationship, they experience fresh pain and fresh recognition of what they lost. You're not stuck the way they're stuck. You're growing and building a life without them. Each piece of evidence of your forward movement creates a new comparison that makes their own stagnation more apparent and creates new recognition of what they could have shared with you but lost through their patterns. The cost compounds because their patterns are likely destroying or damaging any new connections they attempt, creating additional losses on top of the original loss of you. They might date someone new, but their increased defensiveness or their comparison of this new person to you makes the new relationship fail. They might push away friends through their isolation or their obsessive focus on you. Each of these additional losses adds to the comprehensive cost, creating accumulating damage to their relational life that goes beyond just losing you to include losing other connections and opportunities.